attraction, we've got distraction. Now we've got the triggers that prompt us towards these actions. We've got external triggers, which is what you're discussing. These are the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in our outside environment that can lead us towards traction or distraction. Now, this is what people tend to blame when they get distracted. They say, oh, I was concentrating and then I got a phone call, or my phone buzzed, or whatever. Something outside of me caused me to get distracted. But studies find, get this, studies find that is only 10% of the time that you get distracted. Are you distracted because of an external trigger? 10%. So what's the other 90%? The other 90% of the time that we go off track, the other 90% of the time that we check our phone, we didn't plan to, or do something that is not what we plan to do with our time, it is not because of an external trigger, but rather it's because of what we call an internal trigger.
Hey everybody, Tamara here. Another fantastic episode, a great guest. Today's guest is Nir Eyal. Now you've probably heard of him, but let me give you an intro because I want you to be as fired up for this interview as I am, having already recorded it and knowing how juicy the nuggets are. So Nir is the author of Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products. We actually had him on the podcast, years ago now for that book. So fascinating. And he's also the author of his newly released book, which is one we dig into today, called Indistractable, How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. Oh man, we dig into the difference between distraction and traction, the difference between the internal and external triggers, what to do about it, as he says in his subtitle, control your attention and choose your life. I think this is so important for all of us because we are living in such a highly distractible world. But as Nir really points out, it's not just the world that's distracting us, it's our internal emotions and feelings and behaviors as well. So this really helped me dial up my game and get that focus back, get that attention back, and apply my energy to the places that are going to move me forward, not to the places that keep me standing still. So let me tell you just a little more about Nir. So he taught as a lecturer in marketing at the Stanford Graduate School of Business and Design, and he has sold 2 technology companies since 2003. So yeah, the guy knows what he's talking about. Here's the thing. He spent most of his career working in video gaming and advertising and learning and applying what he learned to motivate users to do things. And now what he does is he applies all that incredible experience he has to actually creating behaviors that are beneficial to the rest of us, to build healthy habits in our own lives. He's also an active investor. He puts his money where his mouth is by backing habit-forming products that he believes improves lives. Some of those past investments include Eventbrite, Kahoot, Anchor.fm, Canva, something that I use all the time, Product Hunt, Marco Polo, Byte Foods, the list goes on. This is a phenomenal interview. And what I love about interviewing Nir, like I said, this is the second time, is he really is not afraid to just give you everything in that moment and give you value. I also encourage you to go buy the book, Indistractable. All right, there's so much in there. Before we dig in, I got to tell you about one of my favorite resources because I know this is actually going to help you become indistractable. It has for me. It's called the Passion Planner. This is the best to-do journal organization papers in a notebook I've ever had. Here's the thing. It's got my week and my months and all that laid out, and I organize my schedule and my day and my to-dos and my priorities. But it also has room for reflection. It has questions to ask you to prompt new thinking and new ideas and to kind of look at what you've done in the past month and generate some insights that are going to help you be more productive and more focused moving forward. I love the Passion Planner. And you know what? The middle of the year is not too late to get it. The back half of the year will thank you. And now here's the thing. I keep my calendar, the one that kind of is what my team looks at, what I schedule meetings with. I keep that online on Google. But then every week I take it and I put it into the Passion Planner so that I have a beautiful visual representation of what's happening. But then also I can start really thinking about how I want that day to go, what I want to be my biggest priority that day. It just brings it all together. Go check it out. All right, and now it's time to get indistractable. Nir, thank you so much for joining me from all the way across the globe. This is so exciting.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So listen, we're going to talk about your new book, Indistractable, and how to become that and build a life around that. But I think in order to do that, we need to start with talking about why we are so prone to distractions and that psychology behind it. And you talk a lot about it. So, because I just want to start out by saying that I think that I am very prone to distraction. But then I feel like I am abdicating my accountability for it by blaming everything around me and not figuring out a way around it. So will you just back us up and talk about the psychology and why it just feels like we're so distracted all the time?
Sure, absolutely. So first thing to realize is that you are part of a very illustrious club of people who believe that they are distracted, and it goes all the way back. This is not a new problem. It's not something that has just been created because of our modern technology. In fact, 2,500 years ago, the Greek philosopher Plato bemoaned the tendency that we all have to get distracted. In the Greek, he called it akrasia, the tendency to do things against our better interest. And so this is not a new problem. People have been struggling with this for time immemorial. Just because we have these modern gadgets doesn't mean that this hasn't been a part of the human experience forever. It's just that today, if you are looking for distraction is easier than ever to find because we're all carrying potential distractions with us in our pocket. But I think to answer your question, I think the best place to start is to start with this word, distraction. What does that word even really mean? It's a word that I thought I understood, but when I really dove into it, I didn't really get it. And so a good way to test yourself to see if you know what this word really means is to ask yourself, what's the opposite, right? What's the antonym? So most people, if you ask them what's the opposite of distraction, they'll tell you, well, obviously the opposite of distraction is focus, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
But that's not exactly right. That the opposite of distraction is not focus. If you look at the origin of the word, the opposite of distraction is traction. That both words come from the same Latin root, trahare, which means to pull. And you notice that both words end in the same 6 letters, A-C-T-I-O-N, that spells action. So reminding us that distraction is not something that happens to us, but rather it's an action we take. So traction, by definition, is any action that pulls you towards what you say you're going to do, things that you do with intent, things that move you closer to your values and help you become the kind of person you want to become. Those are acts of traction. The opposite of traction is, of course, distraction. Distraction is any action that pulls you further away from what you plan to do, further away from your goals, further away from becoming the kind of person you want to become. So this is more than just wordplay. This is actually incredibly important because I would argue any action can be traction or distraction based on intent. So let me give you a great example. Yeah. For years, I would sit down on my desk at work and I would say, okay, I'm not gonna procrastinate. I'm not gonna get distracted. I've got my to-do list of 100 different things I got to do. There's that thing I've been putting off, the thing that I've been delaying. Here I go. I'm going to do that one important task right now. Let me get started right away. But first, let me check some email. Right? First, let me do those other things on my to-do list.
And then you do the other
stuff. Exactly. I'll do the easy stuff on my to-do list just to make me feel like I got to do that stuff anywhere, right? I mean, email is something I have to do at some point today. And what I didn't realize is that is the most dangerous form of distraction. It's not the obvious distractions, Facebook or video games or whatever. It's the distractions that you don't even realize are happening, right? When we trick ourselves into prioritizing the urgent and the easy work at the expense of the hard and important work that we have to do to move our lives and careers forward. So just because something is a work-related task, be careful. That's typically the worst kind of distraction because you don't even know it's not what you plan to do. So checking email, even though it feels productive, if it's not what you said you were going to do with your time with intent, it is by definition a distraction. So just like anything can become a distraction, I'd argue anything can be traction. So these days you hear a lot of chicken little tech critics telling us that technology is hijacking our brains, that we're all addicted. Silly, ridiculous, nonsense, totally unscientific. People blaming things outside themselves as opposed to realizing, wait a minute, anything you want to do with your time is fine. There's nothing wrong with going on Facebook or watching a YouTube video or playing a video game. Anything you want to do with your time is fine. Let's stop moralizing and medicalizing perfectly normal behavior as long as it's done with intent on your schedule and according to your values, not the tech companies. Okay. So I'm not one of these people to tell you technology is the problem. It's not the problem. There's something else going on.
Well, and I think there's two things here, but one big one here that I really want to just take a pause on and highlight is, I think part of what I'm hearing you say is you have a choice to be distracted or to get into traction, right? Or get into action. And well, action, I guess, is happening on both sides, just a matter of where you're putting it. So that to me seems like a really powerful bringing control back of, I have a choice. I can lollygag and I can check those emails, or I can do that thing I know I need to do that's actually going to move me forward. And that is a lot different than saying that, well, because everything's dinging, I can't focus, or, well, oh my God, my inbox with all those, bold out subject lines that I have to get to. And the other thing is, I'll just stay on this, is, the other day, so I got an Apple Watch like everybody else, and it was dinging and digging. I'm like, this is not good for me. And then someone said to me, you can change your settings. I was like, oh, excellent point.
Exactly. All right. So so now let's get into the two kinds of triggers. That's what you're bringing up here. You're bringing up what's called the external triggers. So external triggers. So remember, we've got traction, we've got distraction. Now we've got the triggers that prompt us towards these actions. We've got external triggers, which is what you're discussing. These are the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in our outside environment that can lead us towards traction or distraction. Now, this is what people tend to blame when they get distracted. They say, oh, I was concentrating and then I got a phone call, or my phone buzzed, or whatever. Something outside of me caused me to get distracted. But studies find, get this, studies find that is only 10% of the time that you get distracted. Are you distracted because of an external trigger? 10%. So what's the other 90%? The other 90% of the time that we go off track, the other 90% of the time that we check our phone, we didn't plan to, or do something that is not what we plan to do with our time, it is not because of an external trigger, but rather it's because of what we call an internal trigger. 90% of the time, studies find that we get distracted. It's not because distraction is happening outside of us, but rather distraction overwhelmingly begins from within. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, stress, anxiety. Whenever we feel discomfort, we look for escape. Okay, this is the root of all human motivation. We used to think that motivation was about carrots and sticks, pain and pleasure.
Right.
Nope. We know that's not true anymore. Neurologically speaking, everything you do for only one reason and one reason only, and that is the desire to escape discomfort. Everything you do. Okay. So we know this is true physiologically. If you think about it, if you go outside and it's cold, your brain says, ooh, this is uncomfortable. You should put on a jacket. If you come back inside, now it's too hot. The brain says, oh, this doesn't feel good. Take your coat off. If you're hungry, you feel hunger pangs, so you eat. And if you eat too much, oh, now you feel stuffed, you stop eating. So these are all physiological sensations. The same holds true for our psychological sensations. So for example, if you're feeling lonely, check Facebook. If you're uncertain, Google. If you're bored, lots of solutions to boredom, right? Watch the news, check sports scores, stock prices, Reddit, Pinterest, the list goes on and on and on. It is a constant desire to escape discomfort that leads us overwhelmingly to procrastination and distraction. So what I want everyone to remember, if you are struggling with not following through, with not doing whatever it is that you said you're going to do with your time, and you don't know why, because remember, the problem these days is not that people don't know what to do. We all know what to do, right? Do we really need a diet book to tell us that you have to eat right and exercise? We know that. Do you have to buy a productivity book to tell you that if you want to get ahead in your job, you got to do the work that you've been putting off, especially the hard stuff that people don't want to do? Relationships, right? Does anybody need a relationship book to tell them that if you want to build a relationship with somebody, you have to be fully present with them, right? Without getting distracted? We know what to do. We don't know how to stop getting in our own way. And the reason for this is that the vast majority of us, I'm patient zero here. I wrote this book for me more than anybody else. The reason overwhelmingly is that we do not know how to deal with discomfort, that the vast majority of people look for escape from these uncomfortable sensations with some kind of distraction. So the point here is that time management is pain management. Okay. This is absolutely critical. It doesn't matter what kind of tips and tricks and books and gurus you might have listened to and read. If you don't know this cardinal rule that time management is pain management, I don't care if it's too much food, too much booze, too much football, too much Facebook. It doesn't matter. Everything is going to become a distraction if you don't know how to deal with emotional discomfort first and foremost. You have to master these internal triggers or they become your master.
So I got a couple questions for you here because this is so incredibly powerful. And I hope that everybody listening to this, both live and when we release it later, really take a step back and think about their own behaviors. And I think Nir, to your point, particularly those actions that sound productive, right? I've checked it off the list. I checked email. I tidied
Don't
up.
get me started on to-do lists. We can talk about why to-do lists are the worst thing you can do for your personal productivity.
To talk about that, actually.
Yeah, we totally should.
I think it's a false satisfaction that we get out of to-do lists.
Yep.
Sure. And I've learned that the hard way. I want to ask you, because this is so important that we understand this. So I did an experiment after reading your book, because I thought, all right, how much of my day is distraction and how much of it is really traction? And so I listed out all my tasks, and then I went through and I listed kind of where I thought they fell. And it was really confronting to see how many tasks I did, particularly in the morning, because that's when I should be doing the important things for me anyway. How many tasks I did that actually weren't pushing me forward in some way or another, even though they seemed it. And then I went back and I asked why. Well, why did I do that, or why did this happen? And there was one day in particular that I just want to ask you about, and kind of brings into my bigger question. So one day I got an email. I actually jumped on the email because it was from someone I wanted to hear from, and it wasn't good news, right? And it's a little bit confronting and challenging, this email about my work, about kind of the value of it. And I got so distracted across everything. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think. I didn't answer the email because I know better than to answer right away. But that distraction then created this mental residue across everything else that I was doing. So I want to get your perspective on that experience, but also just the consequences of living in distraction, because you can check off your to-do list, but that doesn't mean you're not actually getting what you need to get done.
Right. I mean, this is such a great illustration, this example that you gave, because what I heard were a lot of very powerful internal triggers.
Yeah.
Right. You felt rejection, you felt disappointment, you felt anxiety. And that, for most people, is what leads them to look for escape. Yeah. And people look for escape all different kind of ways, right? Some people look for escape by taking a drink. Some people look for escape by turning on the television. Some people look for escape by checking email when they have other more important things to do. There are 100 different ways that you can find that mental escape. And we shouldn't moralize one thing, one activity or another based on the task itself. For some people, checking email is the traction. For other people, it's the distraction, depending on what they intended to do with their time. The most important thing here is to realize, this is step number one. There are 4 steps to becoming indistractable, but the first step is to master these internal triggers. And unfortunately, we are not taught how to deal with discomfort in a healthy way. Yeah. This is not something you learn in school. But when I did this 5 years of research around who are people who are indistractable, who does and does not struggle with this problem of not following through with whatever they said they're going to do, it's the people who don't have this toolkit that any of us can access to become indistractable. Unfortunately, there are far too many people who look for rationales, for reasons why they are somehow incapable of using these techniques, right? They jump to pharmaceutical solutions. They jump to self-limiting beliefs, right? They tell themselves, I'm no good with time management, or I'm an easily distracted person. I probably have ADD or something, right? They diagnose themselves. You're not a doctor. You haven't seen anybody. What are you doing? Telling yourself that you're somehow, yeah, exactly. And it's, or, so this is what happens. So some people are the shamers. They shame themselves into thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me. And then we have what we call the blamers. The blamers are the folks who say, oh, you see, I got distracted because of Facebook. I got distracted because of my iPhone. I got distracted because of the news. I got distracted because of all these things outside of my boss, my kids. They find every reason in the world why something outside of them is why they got distracted. Those are called the blamers. And of course, we can't do anything about that stuff. That stuff isn't going away. We're not going to hop into some kind of, time machine to take us back before the time of distraction. Distraction has always been with us, right? So those are the blamers. The shamers are the people we talked about earlier who say, oh, I must be broken. I must have something wrong with me. That strategy doesn't work because shame is a very uncomfortable internal trigger. So what do you do when you feel shame? You are more likely to look for relief from that discomfort with, guess what? More distraction. So we don't want to be a blamer. We don't want to be a shamer. We want to be what we call a claimer. A claimer claims responsibility not for how they feel. Okay, this is a really important point when it comes to dealing with internal triggers. You do not control your feelings. It should be a revelation to most people out there. Most people think, oh, you control your feelings. No, you can't control your feelings. You can't control your urges. You can only control how you respond to those feelings and urges. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
If you feel the urge to sneeze, okay, you can't control that. You already felt the urge to sneeze. All you can control is, are you going to sneeze all over everyone, or are you going to do the responsible thing? That's, where the term responsibility comes from, is how we respond to something. Are you going to cover your face because that's the responsible thing to do? Well, of course you're going to cover your face. And it's the same thing that when it comes down to how we respond to our internal triggers. Do we let them get the best of us? Do we respond to every discomfort, every internal trigger by trying to escape it with distraction? Or what Indistractable people do, it's amazing, they actually leverage that discomfort. They use it like rocket fuel to propel them forward towards traction.
Okay, so let's break that down for a second. So first of all, you're just kind of blowing my mind. So I got to wrap my head around it first. So first of all, as you know, there's been just for everyone listening, there's a lot of research done that we used to think we were rational creatures who are sometimes emotional. It turns out we're emotional creatures who are sometimes rational. But what I think is really important about what you're saying is that while we may not control the emotion that comes up, we can control what we do about it. And I think that what you just said, that little hint of separation is going to help so many people, because we let our emotions control us, and then we spiral into whatever that emotion is without thinking we have control over what we do with that emotion, to your point. So
that's right.
I think that's really such a critical part of all this. And to your point about managing distraction, the second part, which I really want to dig into, is you're talking about people who are indistractable use it as rocket fuel. Talk about that, because now my eyes are like, whoa, I want to use the good and the bad and the emotions as rocket fuel.
Super interesting here. Okay, so what I discovered in my 5 years of research into the psychology of distraction, by the way, everything that I write, I don't like these self-help books that are all about like, hey, here's what worked for me, it's going to work for you. No. I need to see the peer-reviewed studies. I am an empiricist. If you look at my book, it has 30 pages of citations to peer-reviewed studies. Very, very important that everything is research backed. Okay. And not only that, I use all this stuff in my own life. I mean, this has transformed my existence, because I used to be probably the most distracted person you ever met. You know why it took me 5 years to write this book? Because I kept getting distracted. Right. I wrote this book for me. It's great that it sold 500,000 copies and that it's changed people's lives. That's nice. But fundamentally, I wrote this book for me, and it has definitely changed my life more than anyone's. And so the process of writing this book, I met these people who didn't struggle with distraction versus people who always struggle with distraction. And there were some really interesting traits that separated the two. So one of the things that I think is really characteristic of indistractable people, and this is something thankfully anyone can learn, is that a distractible person looks for escape from discomfort. They buy this cockamamie myth that we've been sold in the self-help community, that feeling bad is bad.
Yeah.
That the goal of life is to be happy all the time. How many books are on our shelves that promise happiness? I got news for you. Happiness is not what evolution designed, so to speak. Think about it. Let's do a thought experiment here. Let's say that there was a group of Homo sapiens 200,000 years ago on the plains of Africa who somehow didn't inherit our dissatisfaction disposition, right? The fact that we always want more, the fact that we crave, the fact that we have these internal triggers. Let's say there was a group of Homo sapiens who were always happy and contented and nirvana all the time. You know what would have happened to them? If they had met our ancestors would have killed and eaten them. Okay? Because being content is not evolutionarily beneficial. It is what drives us forward. The fact that we are perpetually perturbed, the fact that we always want more, the fact that we're never satisfied, that's exactly what causes us to invent and create and make the world a better place. It's that dissatisfaction. So instead of looking to escape it, what we want to do is to use it. And so indistractable people, they feel the same discomfort that everybody else does, but they don't brainwash themselves into thinking, ooh, every discomfort needs to be escaped from with a drink, with a news feed, with something to take my mind off the problem. No, they lean into it and say, this is a signal that this is something important, that I need to use that discomfort to drive me towards traction rather than trying to escape it.
So I think that's so interesting, because I think on the individual level, that's absolutely true. And we are not taught, and we are not rewarded for leaning into discomfort. I'd say, in fact, we're rewarded for kind of everything getting along and being okay all the time. So I think that's from the individual level. I also think it's true at the cultural level. And let's talk about just in an organization, on a team, right? So how do you deal with that when you are not only you're dealing with yourself, but also you're dealing with a culture where, we're all supposed to agree and give the thumbs up, and disagreement is seen as personal attacks. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of constructive conflict. Huge. I think that debating is one of the most important things we can do for each other, for our work, for all of it. But it's often not only not rewarded, but it is actually punished.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned that. So there are these, we only got to step number one, and we didn't even really get into it in terms of how do you yourself become indistractable. So there are some very practical ways that anyone, you don't have to go see a psychotherapist necessarily. You can learn how to become indistractable by mastering internal triggers. There's dozens of techniques in the book that I talk about. Anybody can use these right away to learn to deal with these internal triggers.
The one that's worked the best for you?
Oh yeah, there's dozens of them. I'll give you one I use almost every single day, and I didn't invent this one. This has been around for decades. It comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. It's called the 10-minute rule, and the 10-minute rule says that you can give in to any distraction, but not right now, because the advice most people heard growing up is just say no. Right? Like if you're as old as I am.
I'm a product of the 80s. That did not.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about, like the whole Nancy Reagan, just say no. And that's how most people tend to approach things that may distract them, whether it's I want to check email when I'm not supposed to. Okay, just say no. Or I want to eat that chocolate cake, just say no, right? And it turns out that abstinence many times can backfire. Why? Because abstinence is like a rubber band. When you tell yourself not to do something, it's like pulling on a rubber band. And the more you pull on that rubber band, the tighter it gets, until eventually you can't pull it anymore. And when you let go, it doesn't just go back to where it started. No, it ricochets across the room. So when you tell yourself, don't do it, 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 eventually when you, fine, I'll do it, that relief of the tension of telling yourself not to do something is registered in the brain as a reward. And so you're in fact rewarding yourself in a way, that relief of that tension of I don't have to tell myself no anymore feels good. It feels like relief. And so you're actually more likely to keep doing that thing that you're trying not to do.
Yeah.
So as opposed to telling yourself no, you tell yourself not yet. Okay. So don't say no, say not yet. What does that look like? So I'll give you a very personal example. So writing is really hard work. I write every day. I've written 2 bestsellers, thousands of articles. I've been published in the New York Times, the Harvard Business Review. It never comes easy. Okay. Writing is not a habit by definition, right? Because writing, it involves a lot of conscious thought. The definition of a habit is a behavior done with little or no conscious thought. So writing never comes easy, right? And there's a lot of myths and overhype, I think, around habits, right? I think people think, oh, I'm going to turn things into a habit. What they're really saying is, I want to do something that I want to make something that I don't really want to do super easy because I hate doing it. Well, writing is one of those tasks. It's always hard work. And so this is why we have to actually lean into that discomfort and know what to do with it. So as opposed to telling yourself, you know, when you're writing, for example, all I want to do is check email or Google something or go get a snack or get a cup of coffee. Instead, what I tell myself is, okay, I can give into those distractions. I can go do those things, but in 10 minutes, in 10 minutes. And so for those 10 minutes, I have a choice to make. I'll take out my phone. I'll say, set a timer for 10 minutes. I'll put it down. And now what I have to do is called surf the urge. Surfing the urge is this idea that if you just give yourself a few minutes to feel that sensation, to feel that internal trigger, what you'll notice is that these uncomfortable emotional states in the moment, they feel like they're going to last forever, but they never do. They're like waves. We don't say stay sad or angry or bored or indecisive or anxious forever. These sensations crest and they subside. So what I want you to try is to just set that timer for 10 minutes, and you have a choice to make. You can either get back to the task at hand that you schedule for yourself, that act of traction, you just get back to that, or sit with that sensation. And I teach you how to talk to yourself with self-compassion rather than self-contempt. It's not some hand wavy, frou-frou stuff. It's just having that conversation with yourself the way you would talk to a good friend. What is it that I'm experiencing right now? Where is this emotion coming from? And you'll see that with just a couple minutes that you can get back to the task at hand. And if you can't, it's okay. By the time that timer runs out, you can give into the distraction. So it works just as well for writing. If you're trying to finish that blog post, like I often have to do, eating that chocolate cake, smoking that cigarette, finishing that big project, what you will find is if you give yourself that 10 minutes to say, I can do that thing, but not right now. So in 10 minutes, the 10 minutes turns into 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you're building what we call self-efficacy to show yourself, hey, actually, I got this. I can do this. As opposed to what most people do is they jump off and say, oh, I'm going to check email. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And they never get back to the task that they told themselves they would do.
I really, there's two things in there that really spoke to me. And I think one of them is you never said I made writing easy. In fact, it's hard every time.
It's hard.
I feel the same way about it. And I have to do it a lot as well. But I used to try to find ways to enjoy it, make it easy, and it doesn't work. Not for me anyway. And it never will. But I think that really maps back to what you're saying about using those emotions as rocket fuel and not trying to avoid them, because then we avoid doing the hard things because they're hard when that's what we should be doing, and just being okay with that.
So that conversation that you've had with yourself just now, what you just said is the exact same thing you can tell yourself when you're surfing the urge. Yeah. You know what? The fact that this is hard means that other people also will think it's hard. And so if I can persevere as opposed to quitting, I have the advantage, right? The world rewards people with persistence, right? One of my life mantras is consistency over intensity. You don't have to be intense. What you have to be is consistent, right? If you think about health and fitness, right? You can't just go exercise like one of these weekend warriors, after the New Year's, they're in the gym for an entire weekend because they made a New Year's resolution. If you want to get in shape, you have to exercise and eat right every single day for years to get in shape. Writing is the same way. Relationships, your job, all these things require consistency over intensity.
So I love those people too, because then you never see them again, and you're like, oh. And
that's how the gyms stay in business.
They went too hard out of the gate, and then you're like, oh, you probably should have. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But you said there. And I mean, I have a little bit of inside know here because I've read your book, obviously. But there are 4 parts to Indistractable, or 4 steps. So will you just kind of high level break them down? I don't want to leave listeners. We talked about 1, so let's make sure we cover kind of all 4 here, because I got us off track.
The first and most important is master the internal triggers. And there's a dozen different techniques. We talked about one of them, the 10-minute rule. There's a bunch of others like those. The second step is to make time for traction. Okay, what does that mean? The vast majority of people out there who struggle with distraction, and I was one of them, they don't plan their day. And that's a cardinal mistake. What many people do is they keep a to-do list. And we talked about a little bit why I hate to-do lists, and I'll tell you for a little bit about it. Part of why to-do lists are so terrible. Let me be very clear here. I'm not talking about the idea of getting stuff out of your brain and putting them on a piece of paper. That's a good idea. What's a bad idea is running your life on a to-do list. If you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, what should I do with my time? And you need to look at your to-do list, you've already lost. Big mistake. Why? Because to-do lists have no constraints. Right? You can add more and more and more and more to a to-do list.
And more distractible things, right? Things that
also true.
And then you give yourself this false satisfaction for checking off things that didn't help you.
Exactly. So when you measure your life based on how many cute little boxes you can check off, one thing that people do is they check off the easy stuff, right? Or the urgent stuff, or they'll add things that they know they can check off because it feels so good. And of course, that doesn't help us. That doesn't move us forward in life, as opposed to when you measure yourself, not by how many cute little boxes you checked off, but by your ability to do whatever it is you said you were going to do without distraction. Because remember, you can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. Let me say that again. This is worth repeating. You cannot call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. How many of us complain about, oh, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. But when you ask someone, well, what did you plan to do with your time? Show me your schedule. I can't tell you how many people have blank space in their day, just white space. I'll do whatever I want. Well, you can't say you got distracted if you didn't know what you would have gotten distracted from. So we have to plan our day, and we measure ourselves not by what we finish. Okay, this is going to throw people for a loop. What do you mean? I got to finish my work, right? Here's the thing. Don't measure yourself by what you finish. That's an output. Measure yourself by the input. Namely, your only resource as a knowledge worker is two things: time and attention. That's it. Time and attention. How do you measure the input? You measure yourself by your ability to do whatever it is you said you're going to do for as long as you said you would without distraction. Here's the kicker. The people who use this method finish more than the to-do list people.
Yeah.
They actually get more done because they work on those tasks when they say they will. They live with personal integrity. They follow through. And so that's step number 2, make time for traction. Step number 3 is hack back the external triggers. So we talked about the 10% of distractions that originate from outside of us. So this is where we systematically go through email, meetings, your kids, your coworkers, all the potential source of external distractions, and we tick them off one at a time to do what we call hack back the external triggers. That's step number 3. Step number 4, the last step, is to prevent distraction with pacts. And this is where we use a firewall. It's our last line of defense, so that if everything else fails, we have a gatekeeper to make sure that we don't fall off track. And there's a few different kinds of pacts we can talk about, but this is the last thing we do in conjunction with the first 3: master internal triggers, make time for traction, hack back external triggers, and prevent distraction with pacts. Using these 4 techniques, anybody from my 12-year-old daughter to anyone out there can become indistractable.
So Nir, I just have to say, your book is phenomenal for this. A couple of reasons. One is it's research based. I'm a big fan of that. I'm with you. I can't stand people like, just meditate for 20 minutes. I'm like, why though? Tell me why I need to do that. And second, I love the real eye towards application and how we actually do in our day-to-day lives. And I think that's really important for everybody out there listening to go get this book, because it is not just, how we're distracted and why. It is the how to become indistractable. And that is really ultimately where we need to head. I have a great question in that I want to make sure we have time to ask, which is, here's what they said. This is from our live audience. I love what you're saying. I'm going to work on my own, in quotes, pain management. What do I do if I've got a leader who doesn't value that? So every time I try to take control of my time and my energy, they see that as me not working.
Okay.
I feel like there's so much.
I love it.
Question. Woo, thank you.
I love this stuff. Okay. So half the book is about things that you can do for yourself, how you can become indistractable. So one of the best things we can do, whether it's whether we lead a team, whether we're parents, is to lead by example. Right. I see many times bosses and parents who want other people to become indistractable. We want our kids to become indistractable. We want our workers to become indistractable. We're like the
opposite of that.
Exactly. Right. So we have to set the example ourselves. But so that's why half the book is about what we can do ourselves. But look, I'm not so naive to not realize that we operate in various environments. So what if your boss is not indistractable, right? What if, how do we have relationships that are indistractable relationships? So the second half of the book is about how do we raise indistractable kids? How do we have indistractable relationships? And how do we build an indistractable workplace? And so let me give you one tip I think that could really help. That, what I'm hearing here is that, the boss thinks that you're not really working. Okay, here's a technique that will change your life. When you start keeping a time box calendar, which means you are accounting for every hour of your day in advance. Not, I don't care retroactively. It doesn't, people say, oh, that's like keeping track of my time. No. It's about deciding in advance how you will spend your time. Because remember, you can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from, which means for the next day in your week, I want you to plan out your entire day. Yeah, down to the minute. Doesn't mean you need, 15-minute little increments. No, you can have, big 30-minute, 1 hour, hour and a half, 2 hour blocks of time, but to know how you will spend your time in advance so that you can tell the difference between traction and distraction. Now, once you do that, you will have an artifact. You will have a physical schedule that you can print out or show you if you keep it with pen and paper that you can share with your boss. Because I've started 3 companies, and I will tell you, every manager out there, every boss out there constantly wonders what the heck their employees are doing, right? We know we're supposed to trust everybody. Yes. But we're also wondering, what the heck are you doing all the day long, right? Because we have no idea. And of course, most managers won't ask you this kind of thing because they don't want you to feel micromanaged. So here's the thing, manage up, manage your boss. How do you do this? You do what's called a schedule sync. You take your schedule to your boss on Monday morning. You say, hey, boss, I need 15 minutes with you. Okay. I just need 15 minutes a week. Monday morning, can we sit down together? I want to show you what I'm doing this week. And you show them, hey, look, here's my schedule. Okay. From 9 to 5, working hours. Here's what I will be doing. Here's the meetings I'm attending. Here's the time I'm spending on email. Here's the tasks, the big projects I'm working on. Here's how I plan to spend my week. Now, you see this other list here? I have this other piece of paper. And here's where I've written all the things you've asked me to do that I'm having trouble prioritizing. Okay. This gets you out of some of the worst productivity advice I've ever heard, which we've all heard it, which is if you want to be more productive, you have to learn how to say, what I'm going to say, you have to learn how to say no.
Yeah.
What kind of stupid advice is that?
Yeah.
You're going to tell the person who cuts your checks no? You're going to get fired. That's terrible advice.
99% of the time, there's a reason why they're asking you to do that. It doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a priority for them.
Right. It's a priority for them. So instead of saying no, you're not going to tell them, no, boss, I'm not going to do the thing you want them to do. What you're going to do is to say, look, no problem. What would you like me to reprioritize? So here's my schedule. Here's what I plan to do with the week ahead. Here's the things you ask me to do that I don't currently have in my schedule. Help me reprioritize. That is your boss's job. Your boss's number one job is to help you prioritize. So they might look at that calendar, and I guarantee they will. They'll say, oh, you know what? That meeting is not that important. But that other task that's on this list that's not in your calendar, that's actually way more important. I want you to flip-flop that out. And by giving your boss that clarity to see your calendar, do it once a week with them, sit down, show them you are being thoughtful about how you are spending your time. And here's one of the added benefits. Show them when you have time, when you are indistractable. Show them, hey, boss, from 9 to 10:30, that's the time when I'm in my cave. That's when I'm indistractable. That's when I will not be answering phone calls and Slack messages, etc. That's when I'm working without distraction. But I will have time. I have my Slack time here. I've got my email time there. I have my meeting times here so that they know when to expect you to be on call, because so many people, they're constantly on call. They're doing what's called reactive work, reacting to emails, reacting to phone calls, reacting to Slack notifications. And they have no time in their day for what we call reflective work. Reflective work is the kind of work that can only be done without distraction. It's planning, being creative, strategizing, thinking has to be done without distraction. And if you don't have that time in your schedule, I promise you, you're running real fast in the wrong direction. You have got to have time in your day to think.
Nir, it seems yes and yes. And it seems to me that is a great exercise for teams to do together as well. And whether that's across colleagues or people you report to you, however your team looks, but how powerful, I'm just thinking from the boss perspective, because I manage my teams. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, if we, for just a month, every Monday, we all saw each other's calendars like that, then actually I, as a boss, you've given me a huge gift of understanding how the pieces fit together even better than I think I do. So
totally.
And I might reprioritize everybody's tasks across this. The other thing, I just want to loop it back to the individual for a minute. Somebody said this to me once, and it changed my game about my calendar. They said, your calendar is not a tool for you to give away your time to other people. Your calendar is a tool to get to your goals. And so my calendar looks like that. I actually block out what I'm doing. It's not just meetings. But and that has changed the game for me, because then I don't tend to schedule over the things that I know I need to do to move forward.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And many people don't have that time reserved in their schedule, right? They let other people decide how they spend their time. It's so interesting. People are so cheap with money, right?
Yeah.
We clip coupons, we look for deals, we're very, very cautious about our money, but we can always make more money. Time we can't make more of. I don't care if you're Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. You only get the same 24 hours in a day. You can always make more money. You cannot make more time. We need to be very stingy with our time and generous with our money. And today, most people, that's the opposite.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And we see time as we don't see it as a resource. We just see it as something that happens around us. Like, it's just the days go by. They just keep going by. Hey, I want to make sure, I want to ask you about willpower, because in doing my research, I was listening to some of your other interviews, and you talked a little bit about willpower and this, without giving too much away, I'd say this myth that we've bought into that actually is working against us. So will you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I talk about how to how to master it with these internal triggers. And so we talked a little bit about the 10-minute rule. Another technique is to reimagine your temperament. That many people have these self-defeating ideas, these self-defeating beliefs about themselves that really degrade their performance, their happiness, their life satisfaction, their outlook on life. One of the most pernicious beliefs that's now become kind of folk psychology is this idea that willpower is a limited resource.
Yeah.
Most people believe this, that you run out of willpower like gas in a gas tank or battery charge on your phone. And for a while, this theory did have some scientific backing. There was actually one psychologist who showed this in studies, that we run out of willpower like we would gas in a gas tank. And as we do in the social sciences, when a study sounds a little too good to be true, when it sounds fishy, we don't take it on faith. We rerun the study. And we call this a replication. So turns out that when we try to replicate what's called ego depletion. Ego depletion is this idea that we run out of willpower like gas in a gas tank. When we reran these studies, they didn't replicate. And it turns out that we're pretty sure, science is never conclusive. You can always get more evidence. But from the currently available evidence, there's been meta studies now, studies of studies, that find that this is not true, that we do not run out of willpower like gas in a gas tank, except in one group of people. Carol Dweck, who you probably know from her book Mindset, she's a fantastic researcher at Stanford. She found that there is, in fact, one group of people who really do experience ego depletion. They really do run out of willpower like gas in a gas tank. And those people, and only those people, are people who believe that willpower is a limited resource. That's it. And so this is a wonderful illustration of how damaging these self-limiting beliefs can be. One of the most common self-limiting beliefs these days is around how technology is hijacking our brains, how it's addicting everyone. Because when people believe there's nothing that can be done, right? If your brain is hijacked, guess what people do? Nothing. I can't do anything about it. I'm powerless. Yeah. And so that's why it's so important to be very careful about the beliefs you let into your head.
Okay. Well, so when I heard you say that, I don't know if I was running around thinking I have limited willpower. Maybe I was almost, so embarrassing to admit, but patting myself on the back thinking I have so much more willpower than so much, like I can always power through. Right. And I had a little bit of identity around that. And then kind of to your point, realize like, oh, actually everybody has it. Maybe I've just gotten into a better practice because I believe it for myself, but it's not because they don't. It's because I believe that I have that unlimited willpower. So
exactly,
which putting me in check.
No, I think that's wonderful, because it really demonstrates the power of how you can shape your self-image however you please, right? Because right now the media wants you to believe you're powerless. We hear this all the time from traditional media, that technology is addicting you. It's hijacking your brain. There's nothing you can do. It is a message that they put out because it makes people passive, right? Like the traditional news media hates Facebook because it's their competition. They're both competing for your eyeballs, for your attention. Yeah. So they want you to believe there's nothing you can do about it. But of course, you don't have to believe that. You can believe something else. What do I want you to believe? I want you to believe you are indistractable. Yeah. That's your new identity. So one of the elements of that fourth step we talked about earlier, pre-commitment, making a pact, is called an identity pact. And this actually comes from very solid research around the psychology of religion, that we know that when someone identifies with a moniker, with an identity like a religion, they become much more likely to reach their long-term goals. So for example, a devout Muslim doesn't debate whether they should have a beer because devout Muslims don't drink alcohol, right? A vegetarian, for example, doesn't say in the morning, ooh, should I have a bacon sandwich for breakfast? No, a vegetarian does not eat meat. It is who they are. It is their identity. And we can choose any identity we want. And so that's why the book is titled Indistractable. Indistractable sounds like indestructible. It's meant to sound like a superpower. And we can use that moniker to explain to ourselves who we are, what we choose to be, so that when we are faced with these difficult situations, that's just something we do not do. And yeah, it's a little bit odd. It's a little bit odd, right? Just like someone who wears unusual religious garb or has an unusual diet, right? That's because it's part of their identity. So yeah, you know what? I decide in advance how I'm going to spend my time. I don't return every email within 10 seconds. I don't sit down for lunch with my friends and leave my phone on the table to allow it to ping and ding me. No, I'm fully present with the people I love. Is it unusual? Yeah, but you know what? That's how we change the world. We become indistractable ourselves, and we spread what we call social antibodies, these new norms, these new behaviors that will eventually change the world for us.
So I think there's I'll just get real for a moment. Not that I haven't been, but you know what I mean? Like, let me just say it as I kind of what's in my head here. Yeah. One of the things I was kind of realizing as you were saying that is it takes getting over the social guilt that we start to feel or take on when we change our routines or our identity. And you're absolutely right about identity. I think that's why our work over here with helping people understand how they are innovators has been really transformative for people, because we're not saying here's a process. We're saying you as an identity are an innovator. Let me show you how, and let me prove it to you with the research. And that's a whole different thing. I think that's why CrossFit as a fitness program has been so successful, because it builds identity. It's not a program you go to, it's an identity that
absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that when you decide to change and take back who you want to be, there's a little bit of guilt that gets put on you. So you're not responding to emails right away. You're sitting down at dinner, not looking at stuff. You've chosen not to or to lean into the hard things. Don't you think that there's I don't know. I know I've experienced this of I've got to put on some armor and not take on the fact that other people don't like that I'm doing what works for me.
Totally. And that always happens when there are these heroes on the front line who are changing society. And I'll give you a great example. So I think we're more or less about the same age, but I remember, you probably remember this too, in the 80s, right? When I was a kid, I remember in my household, we had ashtrays in our living room.
Yeah.
Back then, people, you remember this, right? Yeah. People born after the 1980s will think this is crazy, but listen, there was a time when every family in America had an ashtray in their living room because people
had them.
Exactly. Every car had. You just expected people. This was the norm, that when people came over to your house, they expected to be able to light up a cigarette in your living room, whether you smoked or not. In my family, my parents did not smoke. And one day, my mom was one of these heroes that I just mentioned. She decided no more. Okay. She threw away the ashtray. And when one of her friends came over and was about to light a cigarette in our living room, she said, oh, I'm so sorry. We are non-smokers. There's that identity. We are non-smokers. If you would like to smoke, if you'd be so kind as to go outside. This woman got so offended. How dare you ask me to go outside to smoke? Yeah. But look at today. Nobody would dream of coming over to a stranger's house and just light up a cigarette. No. You wouldn't do that. That would be crazy. right? Well, why is that? What changed? Did we pass a law that says you can't smoke in someone's private residence? No, there's never been such a law. What changed was that people took matters in their own hand and said, I don't want to live like this. This isn't good for us. And they started spreading these social antibodies to inoculate society from these unhealthy behaviors. And you know what? It took some brave people like my mom standing up and saying, no, I don't want to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
That's why we have to become indistractable. Today, there's a bifurcation between two kinds of people in the world. People who let their time and attention and their lives be controlled by others, and people who say, I decide how I control my time and attention in my life because I am indistractable.
Nir, I feel like you just nailed it right there. Like, just to kind of wrap it all up, I know we're running out of time here, which is that like I can either let other people decide and control what I do with my life, or I can decide. And your book is so much more than just like how to manage your schedule or get rid of emails or get rid of, dings that happen. It really is, that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. And that's what it gives you when you become indistractable. So before we close out, where can people go to get your book, connect with you, all that?
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That was really the big message of the book. It's
Yeah.
not just about the technology, it's, turn
Well,
off your notifications. It's so much bigger than that. And I'm so glad that came through. So yeah, to learn more about my book, it's called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. And if you go to my website, nirandfar.com, there's actually an 80-page workbook that we couldn't fit into the final edition of the book. It got too long. So we give it away for free on the website. You can sign up for it right there. It'll start you on your journey to becoming indistractable. And again, that's at Nir and Far. Nir is spelled like my first name, Nir, and far.com.
I will make sure to put all those links in the show note. Nir, this has been so amazing. What is your final thoughts or piece of advice for all of us out here trying to be stronger innovators, but also, I think, to reclaim our lives?
Yeah, I would sum up the biggest lesson I think of the book is this mantra that I repeat to myself every day, that the antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. Okay, the antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. Fundamentally, we all know what to do, right? We have the information, we have those greater intentions, we know what we're capable of. It's about the impulse control that we have that takes us off track, right? That's what distraction is all about, that impulsivity that takes us away from what we really want to do towards distraction rather than traction. So the antidote to impulsiveness is forethought, meaning that one of the things that we humans have that no other animal on the face of the earth has is the ability to see into the future with such high fidelity. We can predict what's going to happen. So here's the thing. If you leave it to the last minute, you will lose. Okay. If the cigarette is in your hand, you're going to smoke it. If the chocolate cake is on the fork, you're going to eat it. If you sleep next to your cell phone every night on your nightstand, it's going to be the first thing you reach for in the morning before you even say hello to your loved one. Yeah. If you leave it to the last minute, you will lose. Your willpower will not get you through. Indistractable people, they don't use willpower. They use a plan. They have a system. They plan ahead. And there is no distraction that you can't overcome tomorrow as long as you do something about it today. The antidote to impulsiveness is forethought.
And just to make sure we are all really letting this sink in, you're really saying not just the action, but the decision happens before the action.
That's
and
right.
Like I always tell my kiddos, because I get up at, we and I were talking about this earlier, I get up at 4:15 almost every morning, but the decision to get up doesn't happen at 4:15. It actually happens the night before when I set the alarms.
Yes.
And if I say to myself, we'll see how I feel in the morning, I never want to get up in the morning. Like then the snooze button goes. But I have to, I make that decision the night before. And I think that's really what you're saying. You're not saying the action, like the action, don't leave the action to the last minute, but the decision. It's the decision that really counts here.
That's exactly right. We know we're all capable of doing this stuff. We're capable of living out our dreams. It's the doing part. But, sometimes I like to take it to the extreme just to show people that they are capable. One of the things in the book is called a price pact, where there's some kind of financial disincentive to not doing what you said you're going to do. So think about it, right? Like the last time that you said, oh, I'm definitely going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to work out, but you didn't because you didn't feel like it. If there would have been a price on not working out, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, would you go work out? Of course you would. Yeah. It's not that you're not capable. It's that you don't feel like it, right? Yeah. That's the reason we don't do what we say we're going to do. 9 times out of 10, it's that we don't know how to deal with these feelings because we leave it up to the last minute. Well, if you leave it up to the last minute, you will lose. You have to plan ahead. You have to put practices in place to make sure that you follow through, that you do what you say you're going to do with your time and your life.
Nir, you have given us so much insight and wisdom. For everybody, go get the book because it is absolutely phenomenal. So thank you for joining us today. It has been it's been a great interview. I appreciate all that you give in the world and to our audience today.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.